Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new League of Legends video. So now that the current ranked season only has a few weeks left before it ends, and of course the next season coming up a few months after that, I'm sure a lot of you are either making your final push to try and get that rating that you really want, whether it's gold, silver, platinum, diamond, master, or even challenger. Or maybe you are already planning for the next season and how you're gonna rank up, the champions you'll play, and just all that good stuff. Well, whichever case it may be, or maybe it's both, I want to make this video to try and help you. I did a video like this almost a year ago when season 5 just started, and I thought it's time to do another one but a lot more in depth. So throughout this video, I'll be going through various tips that I have to try and help you improve your own gameplay in League of Legends and try to get you that higher rank that you're looking for. I've even discussed this with many other Diamond, Challenger, and Master players to try and get their opinion on what they think is the best way to improve at League of Legends. So hopefully at least even a bit of this video you will find useful or informative. But let's get right into the first tip, as there are quite a few of them. So the first thing that you absolutely have to do before you can improve in League of Legends, or really anything in life, is admit that you know what, there is room for improvement. You cannot be stubborn and act like you're the best player ever and there's absolutely nothing you can do to improve because you're simply playing at the best that you can play. So admit that you're simply just not good enough, and I promise you that if you do this and you're open to improving and you're open to critique, then you will get better at this game. I feel like a lot of people have issues with this and they simply don't want to admit that they're maybe not as good as they think they are. But once you're finally able to pass this, you will see improvements. So now that this is finally out of the way, let's actually get into the first tip for improvement. Now this is probably the most obvious thing, but it's also probably the most important. The only way to really get better at almost anything you do is just to play and play and play, practice, practice, practice. You do not just magically get the skills to become a top player in League of Legends and become challenger. All of this comes from practice and experience, so the best way to get that is just to play more and more games. Now I know this isn't really possible for many people that have a job, maybe they have a lot of school, but if you are aiming high, or you are aiming higher than you currently are, then you will have to play a bit more. But luckily for you, there are plenty other ways that you can also improve your gameplay that isn't just strictly playing a lot of games. So let's start getting into those next. So for the third tip, and probably one of the ways I personally like to improve, is to learn from others. Whether you're watching a YouTube video or a streamer play League of Legends, it doesn't really matter as long as you're watching them for the right purpose. Again, if your end result is just to simply have fun in League of Legends, then watch these videos or streamers just for fun. But if you do really want to get better and you want to improve and get that higher ELO, you can also watch for fun, but you also need to try and watch to learn. Now this doesn't mean watch them and copy everything they do, because a lot of the things, like for instance the mechanical outplays that they do, you are just simply not going to be able to copy them. So if you see Bjergsen pull off some really cool outplay with Zed, maybe like a 1 versus 4 outplay, gets all 4 of them and survives, well, as cool as I'm sure it is and as probably game changing as it was, that's not something you'll be able to replicate. So try to watch them for the other things that you can replicate. So for instance, watch for things like where they ward, when they ward, with what kind of ward do they use, which items are they getting, and why are they getting these specific items. Maybe in what order they're leveling their abilities, when are they doing Baron, when are they deciding to group as a team, when are they deciding to split push, a lot of different things like this. So me personally, I was watching Bjergsen play Zed recently, and it actually improved my own Zed gameplay. To me, the biggest thing about Zed that I want to improve on is the laning phase, and I was watching how he laned against an Annie, a matchup that I actually found a little difficult and annoying at times. And what I just simply saw was how he was very aggressive with his shadow, how far he would walk up to the Annie before placing down the shadow and harassing her. And I took that into account, put that into my own games, and it helped me quite a bit. So try to do these kinds of things for your own gameplay as well. Which brings me into my next point, decision making. This is the aspect of League of Legends that I truly think separates the high ELO players from the lower ones. Understanding what you can do, when you can do it, and why you can do it is absolutely massive in this game. And unfortunately, this isn't something you can instantly obtain, and this really does come from experience and also from watching others play. But another way you can do this and improve on this is also watching your own replays, seeing what you did, the mistakes you did, what you could have done instead, and trying to incorporate that into your next game. This is the #1 tip that Valkyrin told me, who's a Master Challenger streamer, that is the best way to improve at League of Legends. Simply watching your own replays, studying them, understanding what you could have done better, and then trying to transition that with each game further. Next, I want to talk to you guys a bit about the duo queue combos and why I think duo queuing actually isn't bad. So when you duo queue with a friend, the pressure is a lot less because there's someone else you can rely on, and there's someone else that you can share the blame with or even share the success with. You just feel much more comfortable playing with a friend. But assuming both of you know what you're doing, it should overall make the game easier for you guys to win since you have the communication, and that's technically one less player that will perform poorly. This doesn't mean that everyone should duo queue. I mean, if you're playing support and you're duo queuing with a top laner, that might not be the best thing in the world. But for me personally, I really enjoy duo queuing with a jungler as a mid player because the synergy is very high and the pressure that we can put across the map is also very high. Let's talk a bit about the champions you should be playing. So the first option is just simply to play the meta champions, which stands for most effective tactics available. These champions are strong in the current meta for a very good reason. So try to learn them, understand them, play them very well, bring them into ranked, and then just simply destroy every single game. So as of recently, Mordekaiser is a great example, and if you decide to pick him up and understand this champion, well, your games should have been easier and you probably should have been winning more than before. But if you dislike following the meta and you just enjoy playing an X amount of champions, then try to main those 3 champions, or better yet, try to even just main 1 champion and become a one-trick pony. Just become so good at a champion that you can win your lane most of the time and you can have more than a 50% win ratio on that champion. From this, you'll have so much knowledge of the champion that you can apply so much pressure throughout the game, and I mean, you will be a force to be reckoned with. There are so many one-trick ponies in high ELO, and they're there for a reason. They know how to play that champion well, and they know how to carry with that champion well. But if that's also not something that you enjoy doing, then try to play the easy champions. This is something that my friend that's in Diamond told me that was the best way for him to climb into Diamond ELO. He played the safe, simple champions that can wave clear well and can also farm very easily. And all you really have to do is just out-farm your opponent, scale into the game decently, and just play your champion properly. So champions like Morgana, champions like Annie, they're fairly forgiving. You can mess up and not be punished. They don't need a lot of mechanical skill to play, they farm very easily, and they can catch very easily. You just slowly starve out the enemy, push them into a corner, and just continue pushing. Next, let's talk a bit about the psychological aspect of League of Legends and just ranked play in general. Tilting is a very common thing in games such as League of Legends. This is where you play poorly because of a negative experience in a previous game, whether it's from bad teammates, you played very poor yourself, you had a very harsh loss, or any mix of the 3. And as a result, your mindset is not as good as it should be, and because of that, you'll play poorly in your next game, especially if you do not take a break. So if you just had a really bad game, make sure you do take a break. Take a 1 to 2 hour break, let your mind cool off, let your body relax, get some food, drink, maybe get some fresh air, run around, take a jog, just set your mind away from League of Legends and that loss that you just had in particular, and then come back to it when you feel fresh and recharged. This is why sometimes when you take a big break from a game that you've been playing for so long, you come back a few days later and suddenly you feel like you're playing a lot better. Well, that's because your mind is simply refreshed and recharged and you're good to go. But speaking of tilt, you can also use this against the enemy team, or in other words, use it for your own benefit. If you see an enemy player is not having the best game, or maybe you looked up their stats in the loading screen and you see that maybe they're not really performing their best for the past several games, you can try to camp that opponent. Essentially, you're putting them on further tilt, making them not an issue in the game whatsoever, and almost making it like a 4 versus 5. This is definitely kind of a mean thing to do since it is sort of a form of bullying, but it is also very effective when it comes to winning in a game like League of Legends. It truly is a very strategic play, and a lot of players in competitive play like LCS, Worlds, or whatever will use this tactic to their advantage. But where does tilt come from? Well, it comes from toxicity. If a bad game or play happened and no one rages at each other in the team, then there is definitely potential that no one will be on tilt from it. But when people start flaming each other and being very rude to each other, or in other words being toxic to each other, that's when everything gets multiplied, that's when the true tilt starts coming out, and that's really just the best way to lose. So this should be more or less as a last resort, but muting your opponents, your teammates, or a mix of the two is very important. I was watching Double F stream on his Smurf, and sometimes he would go into a game and just mute every single person in the game. And this really just helps you focus at the game at hand. If someone is being rude in the chat, being toxic, saying mean things, even if you do try to ignore it, it'll still stick at the back of your mind, it'll still affect your gameplay, and it's really just not gonna help you you or your team in any single way. So just mute anyone being toxic to you or anyone else on your team even, and then just unmute them at the end of the game. The next tip is also apparently Faker's #1 advice. Check your minimap every 5 or so seconds. It is very simple, but it is also so important and core in League of Legends. Constantly being aware of what is happening around the map, who is where and why is so important that it'll help you make your decisions properly. It'll help you understand where you can go, what you can do, what are the potential options, what you should be scared of, when you'll get ganked, and just overall it'll give you a much better game sense of what's happening. A very simple tip, but also one of the most important ones. The next thing is what I personally suffer from sometimes. So essentially what you want to do is try to treat every single ranked game that you play as if it's your final promo game into Diamond or Masters. This will help you try hard in every single game, take it seriously, play at your 100% and not let other things distract you. Sometimes I have issues with this and I don't really give it my all in ranked games because sometimes I just don't care enough. But if you just focus and set your mind to caring and trying to really understand the game and want to win, you will play at a higher level. So just try to get into the zone, try to really focus on the game and not let other things distract you. Following this, we have learning from your mistakes, which is Heizendong's #1 piece of advice. And the point of this one is the fact that every single mistake that happens in a game, whether it's your own mistake or an ally's mistake, is something that you can learn from. So again, if you end up dying to a gank, well, you probably should have warded here, you maybe should have backed out, you should have knew that the jungler might come around this time, or you shouldn't have pushed up as far as you did. Or maybe your jungler got invaded at his race and died. Well, what you could have done to help that maybe as the mid laner is to ward that area, ward the path into the jungle so that you can see the enemy jungler coming in, and then you could have told your jungler to back off, maybe assisted them, or many other things like that. Just try to focus on what you could have done better because really at the end of the day, your gameplay is the only thing that you can change and affect. So try to only focus on that. And the final tip or piece of advice I have for this video is something that apparently Groscore said is his #1 advice. He essentially said you should never have meaningless deaths. Whenever you die, something else around the map should have happened. So if you died to a gank mid lane, well, your jungler should be top ganking that lane and you should have got something out of that. If not, then you shouldn't have died mid lane to begin with. If you ended up dying top lane to a gank, well, your team should be getting dragon instead. There's always an answer to whatever death that happens in League of Legends. It's just a matter of understanding what that is and actually doing it. And you should never die for absolutely no reason. Try to make sure every death on your team is meaningful in one way or another. And well, I mean, that's about it for this video, guys. There you have a whole bunch of tips that I just gave you that hopefully will improve your gameplay, whether you're trying to push for that final rank in this current season or you're already preparing for the next one. If you did enjoy, guys, definitely hit that like button, share with your friends as it does help me quite a bit, and also make sure to subscribe if you haven't. Check out my other videos as well, and I hope to see you for the next one. Peace.